Hey everyone, Stephen Kirkpatrick here with one of our newest managed speakers. I've got the lovely and talented Miss Pamela Barnum. So Pamela used to be an undercover cop, which I think is the coolest thing ever. There should be a Netflix show about her, like legitimately. Once you hear about her story, I'm not going to give it away because she tells it better than I do. There should be a Netflix story about her because it's just absolutely crazy. Pam, how are you today?
I'm doing very well, and thanks so much for having me. I'm honored to be a part of this, and I can hardly wait to start connecting and meeting some people.
Yes, this is crazy. So usually we do a podcast, Executive Speakers on Speakers podcast is the first Zoom call because apparently everyone's Zooming now. So we're going to test this out and see if it works. And you're my first guest, so congratulations.
Thanks.
Hey, so instead of me talking about how great you are, I'm going to let you talk about how great you are. So here's my first question. Undercover cop, like, why? It's like,
That
yeah, why?
I didn't see that happening either. I had always planned different things, but a relative was a police officer, and I'd hear these amazing stories. And I thought, I'd love a job where every day was different. And policing seemed, so I finished my undergraduate degree in political science and economics, not very police oriented, but then I transitioned into becoming a police officer, and very quickly I was tapped on the shoulder to join the drug enforcement section.
Crazy.
As an undercover officer. And because there really weren't that many women, I was one of two women in a unit of 89 officers in that drug.
Oh, wow. Now, was that, let me ask you this, was that because there just weren't a lot of women in the workforce, in that police force, or was it more of just like a strategy thing of saying, hey, we don't feel comfortable putting women in these situations? Like, what was kind of the reason for that?
I think it's a couple of different reasons. First of all, you have to go and live in different towns with a different identity for months at a time. And a lot of women, especially that are moms, that's just not doable.
100%.
So that narrows the field. There aren't as many women police officers as men. So again, we narrow the field a little bit. And the drug world, believe it or not, drug dealers have not embraced women as equals, even to
That's a shocker. You know what? That's an absolute shocker.
So there aren't as many women in that world, and that it's just all those things add up to very few women joining into a drug enforcement section.
And you were like, sure, sounds fun. Let's go sell some drugs and catch guys.
Yeah, it was a crazy ride. I learned so much about people, probably more than any other time in my life. It was like getting a PhD in people reading, working undercover.
I'm sure so. Now, what kind of training, did you have to go under specialized training before you went to the drug enforcement?
We did, actually. So you do an intensive undercover course where you're taken and you go to this other location and you live for 3 weeks and you get tested, all sorts of things. One of the tests is when you're very, very new. So in your first couple of days, they don't tell you when this is going to happen, but you know, just based on rumors and things, that it's probably going to happen in the first week, where you show up and you line up and all of a sudden they take all of your identification, anything, any money, any credit cards. You have nothing. You're stripped bare, just your clothes on your back, and you're put into cars and you're taken about 2 hours away and dropped off in a city, and you have 24 hours to get back and to make money and to find a place to sleep and to do all of these different things. So wow. You learn a lot, especially as a woman. That is a challenging exercise. And then for the next 3 weeks, you learn about drug pricing, drug use, lots of techniques that, of course, I'd never be able to share. But a lot of things go into that training so that you're ready when the time comes.
I'm just going to let that sit in. That's just so cool.
It was very interesting. You do learn so much, Stephen, about people like that. For example, what we call the scrounge, that 24 hours, when you make eye contact with someone, when you know that they are, you're doing some stuff you're trying to make some money. So you're panhandling or you're, doing whatever.
And I'm sure you couldn't tell me like, hey, so I'm a cop in training. Like, you want to do me a solid and give me tips?
Well, they have supervisors that are experienced undercover officers circulating. Some, you don't know if they're watching, you don't know if they're close by.
Got it.
So yeah, you have to make sure. And then there's other exercises throughout that 3 weeks where they put you in places where they think you would be the most uncomfortable. So, where can you imagine that a young single woman would be the most uncomfortable?
I mean, I don't know. You tell me.
Well, they, for sure, it would be like exotic, like strip clubs and things. So they
Oh,
put you in there
jeez.
because they want to see how you're going to react when you're really uncomfortable. And your whole goal is to buy drugs, to make connections, to meet people. You know no one, and you have to go in. So they have to see how well you can do building trust quickly so that you can work through and accomplish what it is that you're there to accomplish. So
So
that
literally,
was
like, so they would send you into like club establishments, someplace like that, with just a bunch of shady people, and they would say, "Hey, like, you need to go buy drugs."
yes.
So it's like you basically need to go in, and within a couple interactions, you need to get to the guy who sells the drugs, buy the drugs. That is crazy. So talk to me about this. And this is interesting. So I'm sure whenever you went into being a cop, you had preconceived notions over, hey, like, this is how I build trust. Like, I'm sure if you're a police officer, you feel like you're a pretty trustworthy person.
Absolutely.
And then I'm sure that, did those change once you kind of got into it, as far as like, this is how you truly build trust, or were they solidified?
I think a little bit of both. First of all, when you're working as a uniformed police officer, you have the uniform, which really communicates credibility. Well, it communicates a lot of different things, and we can have a
Sure.
whole social talk around what that means to different people. But what I'd hoped it would mean is that it would display competence, some degree of authority, some degree of confidence. It really gives you a lot of confidence when you put on that whole uniform. So those
Sure.
things are taken care of just by the uniform. And then you start to live into that because that's part of the
Interesting.
job. When you take
Yeah.
that uniform away and now you're stripped down and your identity is taken away. So I'm no longer the woman with an undergraduate degree and experience in policing. I'm now a drug dealer.
Right.
So you have to be able.
Congratulations. I'm sure your parents are proud.
I didn't tell my mom for a while that that's what I was doing.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's like, how's Pam? Oh, she's great. She's dealing drugs now. Just so happy.
That's right. Yeah, well, that was a whole different conversation. But building trust, because you don't have that uniform, you don't have any of those
Right.
identifiers anymore, and you're also the new person. So
Yeah.
it's not like it's your hometown or it's a place where you've established credibility and you know people. You're a complete stranger, and some of the most suspicious people, bordering on paranoia at times, are criminals because they don't want to get caught. So they
I was
have
about to say, I'm sure you're walking into a place where people are their disposition is to be skeptical.
100%.
Interesting.
So there are things that you can do, and people.
I was gonna say, take me through a scenario. I mean, like, I'm so curious.
Well, one thing that so many people have trouble getting past is undercover police officer building trust. It seems like a dichotomy because
Sure.
I'm there to accomplish a job that really goes against what they're all believing me to be, because I've created this different identity. But for me, I call it my agenda filter. And I think we all have one when it comes to building trust. So if your agenda, for example, with the Executive Speakers Bureau, is to provide awesome content and great speakers that people can, choose what's going to work best for them and solve the problem that they're looking for, that's your agenda. So when you are putting out material and doing things, that's your whole purpose.
Right.
My agenda when I was working undercover was to help eliminate the crime. There's a lot of violent crime associated with drug use and drug sales, property crimes, and more domestic violence than you can ever imagine is happening and all of that. So for me, the foundation, the core of what I was trying to accomplish was to help eliminate that. And I knew I wouldn't completely eliminate that, but at least it was to shine a light on what is happening.
Sure.
And the priority is to get people help that need help. And so for me, that was my agenda. So to build trust and to do things that made me trustworthy so that I could accomplish my job was really, really important. And of course, I carried that into my legal profession, because who's the least trusted profession on the planet next to politicians? Probably lawyers, I would think.
Lawyers.
So
lawyers.
Trust in lawyers. There's another process that comes with that. But I took all of those things, mostly nonverbal, because it didn't matter what I was saying. It was how I said it, what I did, and all of the things, the nuances, those subtleties that you communicate, and if they're amplified online, as we've said, because we've got this little box we're looking into. So what are some things that we can do to exude trust? And those are the things that I did, and it took time, and you perfect them. And now I help other people learn those things.
So it's interesting. So I guess, let's say you walked to a shady establishment, buy drugs, you tried to exude confidence.
100%. Yeah.
And if you hit that, you feel like that was like, if you're like, if I hit this and I show that I'm confident to this person, this person can trust me.
That's the big one.
Which is interesting too, because I think you went back and you said one of the things you learned about in that 3-week period is you learned about pricing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure too, it's like you exuded trust and then you were able to have a comparable street price, then it would kind of like, again, kind of.
Absolutely. So competence around what you're doing, because there are things that someone who didn't grow up as a drug dealer or didn't have that previous experience, now you have to learn all of that, and you have to be able to show that you know what you're talking about and you know what you're doing. And if you can do that while exuding confidence, that goes a long way. And there was an example, I didn't share this when we were talking earlier, but about being locked in a drug house with 3 dealers and a couple of really big dogs and lots of cocaine. And
why they're always dogs? They're always dogs.
There's always dogs. Absolutely.
There's always dogs.
And they're never friendly dogs. They're not the kind you see on the Hallmark Channel, that's for sure. So
okay, legit. Did you ever go try and pet any of those dogs? Like, here, buddy.
Never. No, they were not trained.
That was a joke. That was a total joke. My wife, which thank God she's not an undercover cop for so many reasons, but like she is such an animal person. Like it does not matter the kind of dog that it is. Like she will go and try and talk to it.
And they probably know that she's totally comfortable with that and that they're fine with her. But it's always crazy stuff.
Okay, so anyways, back to the drug house, 3 guys, dogs, drugs, all that kind of stuff.
So the whole thing was prepping to feel that confidence, and the exercises that you go through before you step into that door, because you don't know what's on the other side of the door. When you're going to buy drugs, you have no idea. And when they lock the door, again, no idea, especially as the only woman in the room.
Right.
Lots of things start going through your head, but how do you calm your mind?
Right.
Have that posture and just get right to business. And that's what you have to do.
Interesting stuff. So I'm kind of bridging this towards, the working world and thinking about leadership, building trust, and you talk about, the 2 things that we've talked about, is number 1, having confidence in yourself, and then also 2, showing competence to other people. And kind of like if you had those 2 things together, that's really going to build trust. So let me ask you this question, just kind of bringing it out from undercover police work and drug trafficking and everything. I know you do a lot of kind of consulting work with new leaders. And I mean, I want to focus specifically kind of on that, hey, you just got a job promotion, you're now a new VP, and people are like, Pam, I don't feel confident. Like this is new to me. And I've got to go to my team and portray confidence. Like, what do I do?
Well, and the competence part you touched on as well, but the one piece that we left out is empathy. So when you have empathy and competence and you marry that with confidence, that's the trust equation from my experience and research.
Interesting.
So when you can put those things together, and there are simple things that they can do. So even the setup of the boardroom where people sit and what that table looks like, that's all part of what you're communicating. That's one of the nonverbal signals. So when people walk into that room, and you have a command of that room, tempered with empathy and humility, of course, and how you seat people and what's on that table is going to make a difference. So we walked through some of that, how to conduct some meetings, so that you're communicating that before you even open your mouth. That is the message that people are receiving. And then how you conduct yourself during that meeting, of course, goes without saying. But so many people lose track, and they have these physical habits that undermine their message.
Yeah.
The flicking of pens, the always stroking things, because when we're nervous, we're touching ourselves, we're moving our hair, we're fiddling with our collars and our ties, etc., or we have clanky jewelry, all of these things that we don't give a second thought to.
Mm-hmm.
But subconsciously, it's sending a message to others
Mm-hmm.
that maybe you don't really know what you're doing. You're not really sure. Even your posture is so huge. Maybe a lot of people watching this may have watched the Amy Cuddy TED Talk, one of the most famous TED Talks, and Harvard researcher talking about how we move our body and our posture can really trigger hormones, cortisol. So lowering that cortisol, raising our testosterone, which is a more confident building hormone, and how we can do that just in our movements before we even go into a meeting. And then of course, when we're communicating with others, how to stand, how to sit, what to do with our hands. Politicians are really well trained on this. They have body language experts that are helping them. But sometimes there's always that little thing in the back of our mind. It all looks great, but we're still not really trusting what's being told to us. And because, again, I think it comes down to that agenda filter. If you have filtered what your intent is, and it's a good intent, it's a noble intent, you may mess up a couple of things as far as what we're talking about with some body language or some signals, but that trigger, those micro expressions, because of your true agenda, your noble cause, is going to be communicated to people. So really getting clear on that mindset around what it is that you're trying to do, that's number one. And then I will help fine tune those messages and how they're communicated.
Interesting. Huh. That's pretty cool. All right, I've got two more questions for you. Then I'll let you go because I know you're busy, and yeah, I know you're busy and got a lot more important things to talk to me all day. First question, you talk about empathy, and I'm going to ask you one question to have a follow-up question for you. How did empathy help you in the drug trade, trafficking?
That was everything. And I
see, that's interesting because you wouldn't think of empathy. You would think power, you would think confidence, you would think leverage.
Empathy, huge.
Wow, those came way too quick to me. I think I've been watching too much Ozarks on Netflix. Oh my gosh. It's like, okay, I'm sorry myself. That's okay.
You mentioned my husband earlier, and my husband and I met working undercover. So just so no one's confused, he was an undercover officer as well. He wasn't a drug dealer. So we met, we were assigned to this undercover drug project together, and we call it our government prearranged marriage because at the end we actually end up getting married. And
there you go. It's great.
The rest is history. But we've talked
about the government paid for our courtship. Like,
they
it's
pretty
great.
Much, exactly. Right? And sometimes on overtime. So there you have it. But we've talked about this many times because there were guys in our unit who were incredible guys, like great cops, like they knew the law, they knew everything, but they couldn't buy an aspirin in a drugstore. And it's because they had a mindset around us and them. So there's the police on one hand, you know, the good guys, and then the criminals, the bad guys on the other hand. And they weren't able to marry those two things in their mind, that empathy for another human being, regardless of who they are or what they're doing. Because I have to say, I never met any of the dealers or any of the people that I connected with who grew up with June and Ward Cleaver in a beautiful, wonderful setting, loving parents. You just didn't meet those people. And everybody has baggage and different things. And some people who have horrible childhoods grew up to be remarkable, incredible people and never, even speed. They never break the law. But there are those people who do. And when you can listen to their stories and have some compassion for another human being, some empathy, that things happen for lots of different reasons. And what they're doing is a terrible thing, but that doesn't make them a terrible evil. There are some evil, terrible people, absolutely. But that's a minority, a very small fraction. A lot of people just have real challenges in their life, and you really need to listen, because we've all had things happen, and it may not be on the same level, and you haven't committed those terrible things. And I considered myself, an honorable, good person coming into all of this. And just to hear some of it, I think, and for your leaders, when they can feel empathy for the people that are on their team, the people that are working for them, recognizing that there's a lot of stuff going on, especially as we do all of these Zoom meetings, kids are running through the background and sirens are happening and lots of things are going on. And to be able to have grace for people, knowing that, okay, there are things going on in their life. It's not an excuse, but just to be able to have that as part of what you're judging when you're connecting with other people.
Awesome. Okay, last question for you, and I'm going to make it pretty specific to what we're going through now. Obviously, we got the pandemic going on, we got COVID-19, everything's shut down, everything's on Zoom. Empathy, because I feel like we're at a place in our I was going to say our nation, but here in Canada. So just in our North American history, there we go.
Absolutely.
Where empathy is needed for a number of reasons. What are some practical tips or things that the leaders can do to show empathy digitally?
Well, the first thing when we're communicating is to have great eye contact. So we can do that. I know it can seem strange because especially when you have lots of different boxes on the Zoom and you're not sure where to look and you're looking all around. So if you can just move your the picture of yourself up near your webcam, you can look at that. It may seem a little bit unnatural at first, but yeah, to make some great eye contact with people is so important because and you hit the nail on the head. In North America, eye contact is one of those things that we look at when it comes to trust. When I was interrogating people, if they didn't make eye contact with me, sometimes I was wondering, okay, what else are you hiding? And it wasn't any specific training or research that I had done at that point. It was just that human instinct that when people aren't making eye contact. Now, in some cultures in different parts of the world, eye contact is seen as disrespectful. So it's always good to know whom you're speaking with and what works for them. But in the North American context, absolutely. And we can accomplish that with some good lighting when we're doing things digitally. Natural light is great, but it changes so quickly that it can be a challenge. So to have a reasonable amount of light so that people can see your face, see your eyes, that goes a long way in communicating empathy. There's actually something called iris mimicry, if you can believe it. And the research shows that you're more trustworthy when you're looking at someone's eyes and you're mirroring some of their movements. That is one of the quickest ways to demonstrate empathy and build rapport. And when I teach this to people at live conferences, I say, when you're out in the conference hallways or you're out at the lounge after session and you can have a conversation with someone, you start to mirror their body language a little bit, you'll see that conversation shift and how things seem to be more connected. And I ask anyone to try it at home.
I'm gonna try it at home. I'm gonna try it. I've got something to do tonight, so I'm gonna not tell my wife about this and just do it.
There you go.
So
that is one. And listening, active listening is huge. It may not seem like a trust technique or a nonverbal technique, but it 100% is. If you can do more listening than speaking, even if you're the leader in that meeting, to hear feedback, people feel so respected and so honored when you're listening to what they have to say. And what do we all love the most is maybe not necessarily the sound of our own voice, but we love to be heard. We like to feel that we've been heard. And that is an empathetic strategy that goes a long way in building trust.
That's pretty awesome. Pam, it's been awesome talking to you. You've given me lots of cool insights and things to think about and everything like that. But yeah, hey, for everyone out there, I hope you enjoyed it. For more information about Pam, go to our website, www.executivespeakers.com. You can search Pam, see videos, talk topics, as well as her own TED Talk that she did, which is very cool, and I highly recommend you checking it out. Pam, stay safe. Thanks so much for the time, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Thank you.